bodies, the paper says. The Times also leading with the discovery of 5 bodies in the wreck of the super yacht. Elsewhere, the Daily Mirror reports on the mum and 3 children killed in a house fire in Bradford. The Guardian says the National Crime Agency could extradite foreign cyber criminals to tackle a rise in the number of young people being blackmailed over sexual images. The Telegraph leads with reports of an Alzheimer's wonder drug that can slow cognitive decline by nearly 30%. According to the Financial Times, the Trades Union Congress is expected to push the government to roll back pay cuts brought in under the Conservatives. While the Eye leads with Fergal Sharkey warning the government has no real plan to fix the country's sewage crisis. While the Metro carries calls to give Taylor Swift the freedom of the City of London after her recent Wembley concerts were forecast to contribute £300 million to the capital's economy and £1 billion to the UK overall. And the Star tells us the unfortunate tale involving a python and a lavatory, as it said here. Read that for yourself, as we say. Scan the QR code that you'll see on screen during the programme. You can check out the front pages of those newspapers while you listen to our guests. So let's head to Aubrey and Annabelle. Welcome to you. And, you know, the news today that the families had been dreading. 5 bodies found in this super yacht, the Bayesian. 1 person still missing. 4 bodies recovered in what has been, no doubt, a really difficult rescue operation, Annabelle.
Yes, a very difficult, as you say, rescue operation, an immensely difficult time for the families of those who are on that yacht. And I think, you know, our deepest sympathies with all of them and for what they're going through at the moment. It is just such a sad tragedy, and it seems to have been a freak event. The yacht having capsized after a water sprout struck it, perhaps because of the size of the mast on the boat. It seemed to have capsized very quickly, sunk very quickly, and a very difficult rescue mission ensued. You know, after that, 22 people were on board the boat. You know, a number did survive, but you know, sadly, unfortunately, the divers have found 5 bodies, and Mail reporting that the tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter are thought to be among those who have been recovered. I think over the last few days, there's just been that glimmer of hope, hasn't there, that perhaps, you know, they might discover that there had been an air pocket that had allowed those on board who had sunk with the ship to survive until rescuers were able to get to them. But, of course, those rescuers are only able to go down for 12 minutes at a time, and having to, it's a dangerous mission for them, facing debris and furniture and that sort of thing from the ship. So very difficult in that respect as well. But, you know, ultimately, I think this is the tragic news that we hope we weren't going to read, but we're perhaps expecting.
Well, one technical diving expert we spoke to this evening shocked that they were going down with single canisters of oxygen, actually, which really does limit the amount of time they can go down there. Although employing, you know, other techniques to ROVs, these remotely operated vehicles, and drones as well, breaking through the hull, we understand, because of the difficulties of getting, you know, through the narrow passageways of a yacht, even of this size. So the Daily Mail suggesting, as you said, the tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter thought to be among those discovered, although the authorities in Sicily have not confirmed the names of those who've been found. The Daily Express as well, divers find the bodies of tycoon and his daughter. And there have been so many tributes to Mike Lynch and the work he's done, the work he could have done, haven't there, over the last few days?
There certainly have, and particularly the sort of very poignant comments he made quite recently about how he felt like he'd been given a second lease of life, which seemed to ring particularly sort of harshly given the fate that he appears to have come to. Obviously, we're told that under Italian law, the bodies have to be identified by a family member or someone close to the victim, which is why there hasn't been confirmation from them. But the Telegraph reporting that the director of Sicily's Civil Protection Agency says that Mr Lynch and his daughter are those who've been found. So we're still waiting for confirmation, but lots of the papers reporting Italian authorities believe it was them. Obviously, a really complex operation. Interesting, they say they've got divers who worked on the 2012 Costa Concordia disaster as well, and they've been trying to cut through glass that's sort of 3 centimetres thick, 158 feet under the water. So this has obviously taken a long time, and as that time has gone on, I suspect that the chances of survival have diminished, and that's probably why we're going to end up getting, sad news later today. They have found the 5th body. It sounds like they've not been able to recover it, but they expect there'll be a 6th as well. And
the search resumes in daylight, obviously, for the final missing person. The Daily Telegraph starts to talk about the investigation. Everybody wants to know what caused this, and talks about the captain, James Cutfield, 51, being questioned by the prosecutors from the public prosecutor's office in a town nearby for 2 hours. And they've got a quote from his brother, Mark, saying that he was a well-respected, lifelong seafarer. He said Mr. Cutfield had captained luxury yachts for the past 8 years, had worked on them since he was a teenager, and was a very good sailor, originally from North Shore, Auckland in New Zealand. So you start to, emerge about who was on board. And certainly tonight I spoke to the captain of the yacht who had rescued the 15 people. They had been trying really hard themselves to keep around their anchor by turning the engine on and moving around. Then one of his passengers noticed a flare. They put their tender out, went towards what turned out to be the life raft, and brought on board 15 people, including that baby, and including the captain, who had said to him that it went down in a maximum of 2 minutes, although subsequently this captain, Carsten Brunner, said that he'd seen a video that it went down in about 60 seconds. But he also questioned this mast, suggesting that perhaps boat design needs to change because of the size of this mast, 72 metres high, taller than the depth of the water they're in. So there will be questions about the design, even though tonight on Sky News we spoke to the CEO of the manufacturer, and he said it was a very stable yacht. Unsinkable is how he described it. So you start to see...
There was another famous ship that was once called Unsinkable, wasn't there?
Well, indeed so, indeed so. But this, the investigation... you need to recover the vessel, presumably, don't you? To see.
Absolutely, and often it's kind of out of tragedy that lessons are learned about how to prevent future things like this. I mean, it appears, we hope to have been a freak accident, but, the paper's reporting that the captain of the ship is being questioned by officials in Italy, as apparently is being done to all of the survivors. So I don't think that's to suggest that he's necessarily under criminal investigation. But obviously they'll be keen to understand exactly what he was doing, whether or not this device which is used to ensure balance of the boat was raised, and whether or not that might have contributed or potentially helped the boat be stabilised in spite of the freak weather event. But that will certainly be part of the next phase of the investigation.
I think when there are tragedies like this, and as you say, it does at the moment look like a freak event, there's always this temptation to try and point the finger. So, it would be the crew, and did they follow the protocols? Did they batten down the hatches that they should have done? But as you say, Anna, it would have been immensely quick from the sounds of things. Could they have responded quickly enough? It would be the design of the boat, that it was quite open plan, there was a lot of glass. Did that make it more vulnerable? The mast, as we've discussed, there have been questions also about the anchor. Was the anchor dropped correctly? Did that budge slightly to make the ship more vulnerable? And ultimately, you just have to wonder whether, unfortunately, despite the fact that they're in quite a sheltered place, they just weren't protected against this.
Yes, and maritime authorities say, can you cater for improbable events which cause catastrophe, effectively, and you can't always factor those in. Let's move on, shall we? A whole series of stories about, one, taxes needing to go up, and two, pressure on public sector pay. So let's start with the FT first of all, and this is the TUC and public sector unions, Labour backers, the paper reminds us, challenging Labour to pay more to repair losses caused by the Conservatives, Aubrey.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite interesting because it points to the big row that Labour are going to face in about a month's time, when the spotlight is shone very brightly on them at party conference. And this will obviously be a big celebration for the party. There'll be jubilation and a real attempt to sort of stage manage how it looks. But there will obviously be major union figures who are pushing for significant pay restoration for their tens of thousands of members. And so you have the Trades Union Congress, which is going to be chaired, I think, by the head of the Fire Brigades Union this time. And he has said that they're going to push for restoration for pay levels. He says pay levels have fallen by an average of 1.5% per year since 2011, and they want pay restoration, i.e. a real terms pay increase to the levels that they were getting in 2011. Economists estimate apparently that each 1 percentage point rise in the public sector pay bill would cost around £2.5 billion to taxpayers. So if you took the sort of pay restoration that might be needed, that the FT says is 21%, so equal to £50 billion. I mean, we're talking about money that the Labour government will say isn't there, and they probably wouldn't give even if it was. But they are obviously going to have quite a significant battle on their hands when they go to Liverpool in September, I think it is.
Yeah, early to mid, I think it is. I did look it up and I've lost a bit of paper. But in the meantime, the sort of what's going to be in the budget, and everyone's saying they're suggesting that this child benefit cap of 2 children could be lifted in the budget. That's in The Guardian, while The Telegraph is starting a report on where the tax rises could come, including on employers, it seems.
Yes, I mean, this is the question, is how much is the Labour government going to spend? And based on the last few weeks, it seems like it's going to be a lot because of these very generous pay increases that they've already offered to some public sector workers, including that 22% for junior doctors over 2 years. So what are they going to spend? And then the second question, of course, is how on earth are they going to pay for it? And
when will people start to ask, you give money to the public sector and you tax me for it? That's the sort of the equation, isn't it, for some people?
Sure, and of course we've already had Labour announce that they'll be removing the winter fuel allowance for pensioners, so there are concerns among retirees, among the elderly, that they are the ones who are going to be clobbered by the Labour Party in order to fund higher pay for...
So what is the Telegraph saying then? Because obviously the promise was they were not going to increase taxes on working people.
Yes, a cast-iron promise in the run-up to the general election that there would be a tax triple lock where they would not raise VAT, income tax or national insurance. Now, there's some softening of that rhetoric from Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who is alluding to the fact that Labour might increase employers' national insurance, so leaving employees' national insurance protected. And, you know, this is just really to try and maintain the fairy tale that it's not the employees who are paying employers' national insurance, when, of course, it is. It's a bit of a con, really, because employers will simply pass on that tax to the employees, perhaps in the form of lower wages or fewer promotion opportunities, and they might take on fewer workers. Yeah. Exactly. So it'll be felt by someone. Someone somewhere is going to have to pay for this, whatever the Labour Party might be trying to suggest. But nonetheless, the situation is that we had the public finances data today. We've got this fiscal black hole, and we've got to find some way of filling.
This is going to be a daily what's going to be in the budget story, isn't it? But it's really fascinating to see what the opportunities are for Rachel Reeves. Coming up, though, an interesting one. Could people under the age of 30 soon be enjoying renewed freedom of movement in the European Union? Back with that in just a moment.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling. War, unrest, revolutions.
It's not his country, it's ours, and we're going to take it back.
They have succeeded for the first time in their country's history in removing a leader from power. Now, freedom! There was fighting here, but there's clearly now a lull, and they're using it to bring up more ammunition. We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world. This is a mass exodus in which Russia is hemorrhaging some of its brightest and its best. According to the local weather channel, there have been more than 2,500 lightning strikes, torrential rain and flash flooding, all on top of this week's lethal tornado. What stays with you most in this job is some of the people you meet. What is your worst fear about what the Russians want to do to the children?
They're just boosting demographics by stealing young people.
Would you like to take the opportunity, Mr. President, on Sky News to invite Barack Obama to come here? Mr. Trump, are you running for president? Can you confirm it?
We're going to take a look, a very serious look.
On that day, we saw your fighters killing women, killing children. Was that a mistake? Did you go too far? You couldn't control your fighters? The full force of the state is being used to crush any protest. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued with its ultimatum to the people of Ashkelon, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Another alarm. The mood here is jittery and nervous.
We're seeing the world get more and more divided, and it's our job to try to make sense of it all.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Aubrey Allegretti and Annabel Denham from The Times and The Telegraph, respectively. Now then, The Times then, Aubrey. Free movement for the under-30s in a reset of EU relations with this Labour government. What's the story?
Yes, we've heard a lot in recent weeks about how Keir Starmer wants to reset Britain's relationship with the EU, and there is some sort of scepticism and curiosity about what that means. And it's unlikely that we're going to hear too much too quickly, but we are hearing the sort of rumblings of one of the plans. So my colleague Oliver Wright in The Times reports that ministers are preparing to allow younger Europeans, those are people aged under 30, to live and work in Britain as part of a reciprocal deal. Now, it has to be said that Labour has said this is not a return to free movement. So this is not, you know, any EU citizen who wants to come here will be able to. This is a sort of youth mobility scheme which would be viewed as a way to try and boost employment, fill some job vacancies. But Labour has, of course, been slightly sceptical about the record numbers of legal migration that we've seen under the Conservatives, so they probably wouldn't want this to get sort of too out of hand. They would also point to the fact that the EU would be brought into line with schemes that already exist with other countries, so Canada and Australia. There are schemes that exist for young people to be able to go over there and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's one to watch.
Yeah, and migration figures imminent as well, obviously. Very quickly, 20-mile-an-hour zones, love them, hate them. This Labour government seems to like them despite what happened in Wales.
Yes, Wales really ought to offer a cautionary tale, given how unpopular they were and how embarrassing it was really for the Welsh Labour government to have to announce that it was going to retreat on the rollout in certain areas. And, you know, we ought to have a more practical approach to this, which is perhaps you have a reduced speed limit around schools and hospitals and those sorts of places, but actually you can drive at 30 miles an hour in most other built-up areas. But nonetheless, the new Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, has said that she will hand local authorities essentially powers to introduce these schemes, 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and low-traffic neighbourhoods. Unpopular, I think, in equal measure. Apart from with maybe councils, because they're yes. But and also, I imagine some local authorities who will see them as money raisers.
OK, Annabel, Aubrey, great to see you both. See you more for later. Well, the remnants of Hurricane Ernesto will bring wind and rain from the